The United Nations estimates that by 2050, Nigeria's population will double to around 400 million people.
Against this backdrop, there is a lack of adequate housing in a country where many inhabitants live on less than $1 a day, despite the nation being blessed with enormous resources. The head of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Ahmed Dangiwa, puts the country's housing deficit at 22 million units, the bulk of it in urban areas.
Now, providing housing to close this gap will cost about 6 trillion naira yearly. Aside rising population, urban migration and uncoordinated policy direction of the government are other critical factors deepening the housing gap.
Well, joining me now is Public Affairs Analyst Ayodele Adewale. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the federal government had led the way when it came to issues of housing, where they provided low-income estates where people could afford. And for Lagos, we had the then Governor Lateef Jakonde even implement this in parts of the state. But along the line, what happened? Because over time now, a lot of people complain when it comes to issues of housing, and you can also see the deficits being recorded.
I think the strategy needs to change, and I've often said that government is not about making profit, but of course distributing opportunities for people to grow. So what government needs to do basically is to work with private individuals who are producing a lot of these building materials. Take for instance cement. Government could remove tax, give tax waivers and also give import waivers in that regard, just as they've done in agriculture. This will bring down the cost of producing the basic materials. And government can also use a direct strategy towards engaging the workforce. And how do I mean? Government could target about 10 million housing within 4 years, and of course break out the units, get people, train people to become semi-skilled or skilled labor, as the case may be, and of course put a lot of intervention into that area, and you achieve it.
And this will close the gap, which is recorded that we have. It will take 6 trillion naira to close the gap.
When you remove those,
it wouldn't take that.
No, it won't take that. When you remove those incentives, you understand? You remove those incentives for the companies, it will bring down the cost of materials, so it wouldn't take that. But
wouldn't that also, aren't there implications to that as well, seeing we have had cases of building collapse and all of that? When you give tax waivers, we're also looking at having quality materials as well.
You're not going to mortgage quality. Of course, you're going to work with the various institutions that regulates building control and all of that. You're also going to work with the academia and all of those things. You are going to train the workforce to give you the deliverables. So you are not going to compromise the system.
But the mortgage banks have also said that the amount they receive, their resources and costs they receive, basically, so to speak, has also reduced over time. Doesn't that show that on the part of the government, as some have said, or experts have said, that the political will to actually deal with these issues is not there?
That is why I say you change strategies. By the time you change strategies, you put in your political will towards that. Now, if you can give subsidy in the oil sector in order to make petroleum product more available, you can also subsidize in the housing sector. Because when you produce, when you guarantee housing for the Nigerian people, automatically you are removing corruption from the stream. For instance, your major drive when you got employed into this system is to first of all solve your housing need. That is the first problem every worker intends to solve. By the time you solve that for them, you would have removed corruption from our system. You would have reduced unemployment. You would have reduced insecurity that is abound.
Now, speaking about insecurity, how much impact is that having on this issue? Because you look at the Northeast as recorded in that report, people fleeing their homes because of these issues of insecurity in the Northeast, for example. What
led to that was that people were not, a lot of youth were not employed. So they were very easy areas for people to recruit and all of that. So basically, you have to find a way to engage the people, because if you don't engage them, other activities will engage them. So if you engage them to the extent that they can make money for themselves, they can fend for themselves, they can provide for themselves, and they can bond those loose energies, you would have solved those problems.
All right, Ayodele Adewale, thank you for your time on
Thank you
TVC
for having me.
Breakfast.
The United Nations estimates that by 2050, Nigeria's population will double to around 400 million people.
Against this backdrop, there is a lack of adequate housing in a country where many inhabitants live on less than $1 a day, despite the nation being blessed with enormous resources. The head of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Ahmed Dangiwa, puts the country's housing deficit at 22 million units, the bulk of it in urban areas.
Providing housing to close this gap will cost about 6 trillion naira yearly. Aside rising population, urban migration and uncoordinated policy direction of the government are other critical factors deepening the housing gap. And joining me now is Public Affairs Analyst Ayodele Adewale. It's nice to have you join me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the Nigerian housing policy was promulgated in 1991. And since that time, it was meant to take care of the issue of building technology, issues of infrastructure, issues of land, and so on. Since that time until now, we've not been able to kickstart a national policy that is sustainable and for Nigerians to have a buy-in into what it takes to build a house, for instance. Anyone who has the intention of building a house, what step-by-step measure you should take to have a house in place. Where do you think the problem, the challenge really is here?
I think first and foremost is the political will.
Okay.
If the political will is put in place, definitely we are going to resolve this problem. If you look at it at the 70s, the earlier part of the 70s when Nigeria needed to put some housing stuff in place to celebrate the African culture of art or whatever it's called,
The
festival then, they went and within about 2 years, Festac was built. And the technology is still there. It was the political will.
And Festac is like a community of its own.
You understand? Festac should be the baseline, the basic housing pattern that we should have in Nigeria. Looking at all the infrastructures that you have in there. As much as I would not like to celebrate the military administration or regime as the case may be, take for instance Gwarimpa Estate. Yeah. It was built under the military administration and all of that. So it is the political will. And this administration is also towing that political will, making sure that the housing need is resolved. But in order to resolve it, there are some basic things that you need to just remove in terms of, helping to produce the major material that is needed. You need to take off taxes. You just need to take off taxes because this is a dear need for the Nigerian people that can help stagger the economy, create jobs, resolve unemployment, resolve insecurity questions, and so many things. You need to remove the import waivers. You need to bring in importation waivers for some material that will be imported. You need to work with regulatory agencies, professional bodies, and the academia in order to regulate and, of course, train people that will get involved. You need to have a target. Nigeria can, with our population, we can provide at least 5 million homes per year. Homes, not just housing unit. When you talk about homes, you could have a skyscraper of about, say, 10 stories and have about 4 flats in it. So it gives you 40 flats in one building, depending on where you want to put it. You understand? You need to also provide energy, modular energy source. You don't have to connect it to the national grid. Take, for instance, I want to build a housing unit in Bayelsa. You understand? I want to provide for, say, 200,000 people. I have the sea to my advantage. I have the wind to my advantage. I have gas to my advantage. You understand? Then the national
so it's the issue of taking advantage of all of those.
What you have.
Now, the final question I'm going to ask you right now is, we know how, when it comes to land issues, we know how connected people are to the issue of land ancestrally and all of those. How does that compound the issue of access to having land to build and so on?
With the kind of law we have, land is not a problem.
Okay.
For instance, if you own a land, I would rather buy you into the project and take the land from you, as the case is. Now, I take a land from you, maybe I take about 100 hectares of land. You understand? I'll factor you into that housing unit so that generation yet unborn will also come to enjoy it. I won't arbitrarily take off the land from you. I will also create competition because you cannot totally take away the housing industry, as the case may be, from private individuals. Of course, they can go into luxury homes. If you need such, you can, seek such.
All right. We have to leave it here now. Adele Adewale, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.